When I was in high school, I dated a girl during my junior and senior years. After that relationship ended badly, I was eager to leave my hometown and start fresh. My older sister lived in Oklahoma City and said she could help me get a job there. So I decided to move over 1,000 miles away to a city I had never visited before. It wasn't a huge culture shock, but there were some adjustments. My job started at 5 in the morning, so I had to adapt to a new sleep schedule, going to bed early and waking up around 4:00 a.m. The factory where I worked was near an Air Force base, so my commute mostly passed through the outskirts of town. I'd see a few neighborhoods, but mostly just rolling fields of tall grass. Every day, I passed by a creepy, abandoned building that stood out among the trees. In the mornings, it looked like a dark phantom, isolated and eerie, like something out of a nightmare. I didn't think much about the abandoned building on my commute, but over time, I guessed it might have been a school or an office building. After living in Oklahoma City for a while, I met a guy named Stefan who worked at a movie rental place nearby. Since I was new in town, I spent weekends watching rented movies, and Stefan became my first friend. He was tall, handsome, and had a fascination with working as a mortician. He liked pulling practical jokes, especially ones involving cadaver teeth, and he loved horror movies and scary stories. Oklahoma may not be the oldest or most cultured place, but it has its share of allegedly haunted places. Stefan liked to investigate these stories, often dragging me along on late-night adventures to find ghosts or monsters. One day, I came home from work to find Stefan waiting for me, smoking a cigarette in the humid Oklahoma weather. As I pulled into the driveway, Stefan rushed over to my window, excitedly talking about some place we had to go see. I asked what it was, and he said he didn't know but had always wanted to check it out. After changing clothes, we hit the road, which was unusual because we usually did our ghost hunting at night. Many of the places we visited were condemned or on private property, so we had to be sneaky. The drive was familiar, and we smoked a couple of clove cigarettes on the way. When we arrived at the old brick building, I was stunned. It was the same building I passed every day on my way to work. "I know this place," I said. Stefan admitted he did too, and said he had always wanted to explore it. I asked why we were doing it during the day instead of at night. I asked Stefan about our sudden daytime adventure, and he simply pointed to a real estate sign near the driveway entrance. It clearly said "for sale" in big red letters. It was kind of genius with the sign there. We could pretend to be potential buyers and explore the property without sneaking around in the dark. We parked and got into character, pretending to be investors. We weren't dressed like wealthy investors, and if anyone questioned us, we'd have to come up with a convincing story. Luckily, there were no other cars around, just us and the "for sale" sign. We walked around the front yard, keeping an eye out for cameras, but didn't see any. The place was run down, but massive, and I thought it could be used as a homeless shelter. Regardless, we explored the lawn and trees, relieved to find no cameras watching us. It was finally time to explore. For some reason, I felt caught up in the mystery of the place. Maybe it was because I was a transplant, not from there, but I had come to know the area on my own. We walked up to what I thought was the front of the building, a massive brick wall with narrow windows at the top, wide ones at ground level, and more narrow ones peering into the basement. Most of these windows were smashed, giving us a glimpse inside. As we crouched to peer through the ground-level windows, I was shocked by the state of the basement. It looked like a tornado had torn through it, beyond destroyed. The concrete walls and floors were shattered, with paint and dirt splattered everywhere. There was evidence of a fire in one corner, and all the furniture was smashed into splinters. Anything that was once drywall or insulation was now dust and mold amidst the wreckage. There was a single wooden chair with a white balloon tied to it, floating a few feet in the air. It was filled with helium, like a party balloon, which creeped us out, but also intrigued us. As we realized there was no door on the broad side of the building, we walked around to the east side and found a staircase leading to an open entrance with hinges but no doors. The double doors were blown open, allowing anything to come and go. Beneath an old dying tree, we saw the name of the facility, St. Vincent's Home for Boys, written in faded block letters with a black accent bar around it. Ascending the stairs, we entered a long hallway with a small desk covered in multicolored wax and scorch marks. It seemed someone had burned candles on the table until they melted and coated it entirely. On the wall behind the table were painted words, including "We all die." The place was a complete creep show from top to bottom. As we explored the halls, we found creepy stuff on the walls and old clothes and briefcases scattered in the rooms, which all looked similar, like an old-timey hotel. The discarded items were seriously dated, like they hadn't been touched since the place was abandoned. I found a sealed drawer in a desk and managed to jimmy it open. Inside were medical records that were 70 years old, containing names and social security numbers. It was unbelievable to see so much delicate information forgotten in a box. The top floor felt like a time capsule, except for the scary threats and messages painted on the walls. We found dark, steep stairs made of crumbling concrete, leading to the basement. About halfway down, we found the first piece of a doll, the thick, bendy rubber kind that comes apart if you pull hard enough. The basement seemed to have thousands of them in various states of disassembly, some with crazy faces drawn on them and splattered with red paint. It was weird, but Stefan and I were into it. As we descended the stairs, we heard a strange noise like a metal door closing in the basement. We looked around but didn't see anyone or any metal door. There were metal desks with drawers, but they were too bent and warped to close quickly. We even found a safe in one room that hadn't been opened yet. We were shocked that no one had pried the safe out of the floor yet, even though it wasn't very big, about the size of an end table. More creepy stuff was painted on the walls, and I followed some of it around to the back, while Stefan lingered up front, fascinated by the chair and balloon. More candles had been burnt in a circle around the seat. I stepped into a big bathroom with tile showers and multiple toilets, like a small gym bathroom from the 1950s. By the sinks, I saw some old, rusted medicine cabinets, most of which were shattered. I moved one of them back and forth, and it seemed to still rotate well. Then, I slammed the metal frame of the cabinet, perfectly recreating the slamming noise we heard earlier. Mystery solved. I went back to Stefan, who was wide-eyed and ready to bolt upstairs. I explained what I found, led him to the bathroom, and showed him everything. As we continued exploring, we discovered more rooms with creepy odds and ends. There was evidence of strange seances or rituals, and Stefan told me about different cults and devil worshippers that allegedly had been in the area. We started exploring some bedroom units on the back side when we heard the scariest thing, a man coughing, or at least trying to clear his throat. We stopped and listened again. It sounded like the coughing was coming from the walls around us. It would cough, clear its throat, then turn to gasping and other guttural sounds. It grew louder and louder until we were forced to book it back the way we came and out into the sunlight. The basement was beyond dark, like we'd stepped into another world down there. I swear the last thing I heard before climbing back to the first floor was that choking and gasping sound, turning into laughter for just a split second. Stefan didn't hear it, but he was also ahead of me trying to get out of the basement quickly. He sought out the stuff but was a bit of a turncoat the moment anything got too dicey. As we climbed the stairs, there was a tremendous banging coming from the concrete behind us. It sounded like the medicine cabinet clatter but multiplied by 1,000. It felt like the whole building was shaking, all through a deafening metallic sound. This day we both have no idea what that could have been. Topside, nothing had really changed. No cops, no real estate agents, no property owner. We were still free to look around and explore. After poking around the last few rooms and snapping a couple of pictures, we hopped back in Stefan's car and went back to my place to debrief and talk about what had just happened. The first thing I wanted to do was some research on St. Vincent's Home for Boys. It was all that was running through my mind, and let me tell you, it's going to simmer in yours for a while too. We figured we'd find some history of failed business, but much to our surprise, St. Vincent was originally opened in the 1940s as a mental asylum. Its operators were a group of Catholic rehabilitators known as the Brothers of Mercy, but very little of that was found there. Allegations of physical, mental, and sexual abuse came from patients between the ages of 9 and 90 years old against multiple male nurse staff of that asylum. Soon, allegations of murder began to surface. One nurse actually confessed to suffocating 2 different patients simply to see what it was like. While all this was happening, St. Vincent was constantly expanding, adding more rooms to house more patients. Throughout all of this, the Brothers of Mercy only hired male staff and patients. The facility eventually transitioned into the hands of Richard Dolan, a priest and rehab consultant. He wanted to remodel it into an all-male drug and alcohol clinic where patients could live on site and receive both prayer and treatment. His plans were to further develop the property, but that never came to fruition as Dolan was found beaten to death in his apartment in 1988. His murder remains unsolved to this day. Friends of his claim that the priest had been attacked by various strangers in the days leading up to the murder. Stefan and I gleaned all of this from an hour of scrolling on Google back at my place. We were both absolutely floored. The craziest part was that there was a semi-local ghost hunting team who had visited the facility within the last couple of years and had a lengthy breakdown of it on their website. We got to watch them in the videos exploring the exact same halls. They even had some kind of EVP recording, a musty, deep male voice saying things like leave or help. It was some of the most unsettling stuff that I've ever heard, and honestly, it brought me to tears when I heard it and read about it. I couldn't believe I had just been traipsing through a place where people had literally been murdered for fun. All those crazy sounds we heard suddenly made sense in a sickening way. Finding the truth online that night was mind-blowing and not in a good way. Hell, even my commute to work was a dread every day after that. Not just seeing, but knowing what went on in there. I had no idea I'd been driving by one of the most haunted buildings in the entire state of Oklahoma. St. Vincent's Home for Boys is still standing to this day, remaining for sale for any of you who might be interested.